Hey, 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 good afternoon. It's NutBallCop once again. How is everybody doing? Happy Monday. I hope you had a nice holiday week and getting ready for the new year. Um, I had a good Christmas, great time with my family and my sons and my in-laws, my wife. Had a very nice dinner, had a very good time. Um, Enjoyed my personal holiday, the winter solstice. We made it around the sun one more time. That's all we have. I like the holidays, I like Thanksgiving and Christmas for the family part of it and the dinner. um, Being a foodie, I really enjoy those days. But um, speaking about it being a foodie, I've mentioned before that I have been married for a very long time. I've known my wife now for 40 years. We'll have our 38th anniversary in a couple of months. Um, and our relationship started in as friends. We just knew each other because we lived in the same. We were just her dad was stationed in the same town that I was stationed in, and we kind of knew each other from around base and through mutual friends and everything. Um, One of our first actual dates together was in a beautiful little family-owned Italian restaurant on the Naha River in Bad Kreuznach, West Germany. Picturing the bridge houses in my head right now because it was just down the street from the bridge houses. And so we always have loved going out to dinner. Dinner dates are kind of our thing. Even our kids kind of laugh at us. We go out on so many dinner dates. Um, and just last week, um, I was working late. My wife got caught up doing a couple of things, and we're like, I don't feel like cooking. Oh, let's run down to our favorite late night. It was already later in the evening. There's a great Japanese place in town that's open to midnight, and they have a full kitchen till I think 9:30, and then a limited kitchen to midnight, and of course, Sapporo and great sake flights and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like our later night hangout when we want something close by, and we still want to have a dinner date, but we don't want to drive all the way to the city or drive, you know, 15 minutes or something. We just want it somewhere close and good and you know, someplace where they know us. It's always nice, and they always greet us nicely when we come there. So we are sitting there at the Japanese late night place the other night, and we got into this conversation. And I have my phone up here, right here, because I got a whole list here. We started thinking about the 100 people. No, I'm sure there could be many more than that, but we wanted to take 100 Americans who really were breakthroughs in their fields, in the arts and music, writing, science, whatever. They're just way up there um in the whole idea of being a successful American and a better American than dear leader porn star Humper. And there's uh a plethora of people that should be acknowledged, uh, that are far superior Americans than Trump can ever imagine himself being, because he's turned out to be the worst president we've ever had by far. Nixon's Watergate is child's play compared to what we're going through now in dear leader's second term. So my wife and I sat there. We were probably at the restaurant for two and a half hours, at least 2 hours and 15 minutes. And we created this list on our phones, and we're looking at people, making sure they're Americans, and we're like, this is all the people that we thought up that are clearly better Americans and better peoples, more successful, contributed more to country, society, culture of America than dear leader has ever imagined he can do. It's quite a lengthy list, but bear with me. Let's go through this because I think it's important to know that we have a lot of great Americans. Dear leader ain't one of them. Okay. Number one on my list has to be number one on my list because he's one of my favorite dudes. He's not my top three. I told you all my top three before. It's Richard Feynman, um, Benjamin Franklin, and Isaac Asimov. The honorable mention to those three is Mark Twain, Clarence Clemens. Um, Mark Twain is probably the greatest satirist in American history, one of the best writers in American history. A guy that was not afraid to grab anything, any third rail of our society, and speak plainly about it. Mark Twain is a true American treasure, unbelievable treasure. Um, Much better than Dear Leader. The second one we came up with was pick a Gershwin. Doesn't matter which one, Ira or George. The Gershwins are probably some of the most prolific, incredible creators of some of the most genius modern classical and classical influenced jazz songs of all time. Rhapsody in Blue, which my son performs professionally, um, the theater director and the professional piano player. Um, Rhapsody in Blue is probably one of the most beautiful songs ever written. And I'm so glad it was one of the ones picked for Fantasia because the cartoon that goes with the song is perfect. It's beautiful. Um, yeah, the Gershwins produce some of the best music mankind has ever heard. I think that's worthy of being on this list. Um, Next one we came up with was the American scientist and astronomer Vera Rubin. Vera Rubin got screwed. She should have gotten a Nobel Prize. Okay, she was the one that figured out the reason why the galaxies are spinning so fast. And if you do the math, they should have stars being ejected because of the velocity of the spinning. The stars should be getting thrown out of the galaxies, but they're not. She's the one, probably with Fritz Zwicky. She'd have shared it with at least Zwicky, if not even a third person. Uh, but her discovery of dark matter changed our understanding of the universe. Okay, and Vera is one of the coolest scientists of the 20th century. She ranks up there with Hubble, um, Dirac, um, just what she, the completeness of our observations and what she discovered is just thoroughly incredible. The American artist Jackson Pollock, okay, revered artist, okay, um, in front of many pop culture jokes, like in Gardens of the Galaxy. Um, he's not my favorite artist, but the way he did abstractionism in art, um, yeah, he exploded a whole new vein of painting. And I think it's substantial. Um, the American rock star, composer, who also wrote orchestral pieces, classical pieces, and a ballet, Frank Zappa. Also, Frank, along with Dee Schneider from Twisted Sister and John Denver, the pop country artist, were the ones that stood up against the censorship of the 1980s and the idiots of the Parents Resource Music Council. Frank was highly outspoken, and I've been saying this for years. America would have probably been better off if we'd have voted for John Anderson, the guy who left the Republican Party to call out Reagan's bullshit, or another true conservative anti-communist, Frank Zappa. We'd have been better off with Anderson or Zappa than we would have with Reagan. Another American historical sort of hero, local fave around here because he was arrested just down the street. Fred Karamatsu, the first guy arrested in the horrifically unethical and immoral Japanese internment. Much better, much more important of a American than Dear Leader will ever be. The American photographer and photojournalist Dorothea Lange, the famous Great Depression photos, the what did they call her? The Cleopatra of the Midwest, that famous photograph of the mom and the kids. Um, Also, she did work with the Japanese internment. That was another thing she did. Dorothea did. Um, yeah, photojournalism is a thing. It's an established method of communication, in large part because of Ms. Lang. American blues artist and probably one of the reigning godfathers of rock and roll, Buddy Guy. Buddy Guy was one of the guys who brought the blues from the South to Chicago and to Memphis and turned it into amplified music, which we now know as, modern blues. Um, Buddy Guy has probably inspired untold number of guitar players. If you're into playing guitar, like I haven't ever met a fellow guitarist who didn't know who Buddy Guy was and the influence he had on music, guitar playing, recording, um, and the whole cultural shift of moving the blues to into what we now know as rock and roll. And Buddy, one of the biggest quotes Buddy Guy always says, and I totally agree with this: it's all rock and roll. Don't care what it is. If it's American music, it's all rock and roll. Uh, American war hero, Sergeant York, much better American than Dear Leader. Sergeant York was a pacifist. Ended up winning a Medal of Honor because he realized if he didn't fight the Germans and drop a few of them, he'd lose his entire unit. He ended up capturing an entire German battalion practically single-handedly. Amazing story. Next one is another Army hero, the best soldier the Army has ever produced in American history, Lieutenant Audie Murphy. Lieutenant Audie Murphy was decorated with the top honor, the Medal of Honor or equivalent, from 3 or 4 countries. I think Belgium gave him one too. But they didn't give him the big one; they gave him the next one down. But I know he got the Croix de Guerre, the Victoria Cross, and the Medal of Honor. Besides a whole bunch of other things, and he's also I think a major in the Texas National Guard or Texas Reserve, something like that. Honorary thing they gave him. And an honorable mention to better Americans than Dear Leader is Army Military Police Sergeant Leanne Hester, who should have been given the Medal of Honor in Iraq. She was a medic working with a military police unit. She ran under fire, rescued 2 soldiers, dropped enemies in the rescue. Unfortunately, my father and I both agree that the only reason she did not get a Medal of Honor is because she doesn't have a penis. And also an honorable mention is my father-in-law, Command Sergeant Major Zip. That dude's a force of frickin' nature. Much better American than Dear Leader. I have so many people on this list. So I have to remind myself of some of them. um, Nellie Bly, the author who was the inspiration, got inspiration from Jules Verne, and she did the 72-day trip around the first kind of world traveler. um, uh, she covered labor rights, politics, social issues, influenced a lot of people. Huge, um, early figure in modern journalism. Um, oh, here's one of my favorites: American physicist Claire Patterson. Claire Patterson did 2 things, both of them that were freaking amazing. Okay, one, He discovered the age of the Earth within a tiny certainty. Okay. So everybody running around saying the Earth is 4,000 or 6,000 or 10,000 years old, they're so far off they don't even understand how far off they are. It's about 4 billion years old. And he proved it with the uranium zircon decay cycle. It's not a question, it's not a guess. It's an actual mathematical calculation with a very low error rate. So we actually know. And Claire Patterson, until he drove from his lab to his mother's house, he was the only person ever in mankind's history. He was the only person alive at that moment who actually knew the age of the Earth. That's amazing. Oh, and he also discovered through his uranium lead zircon decay process that the lead we were putting in gasoline was killing the entire planet and uh, destroying both human life and wildlife with abandon. His research was the reason we got lead out of gasoline and we stopped poisoning ourselves. Um, Another American scientist, physicist Richard Feynman. Like I said, one of my favorite three. Feynman is responsible for quantum electrodynamics. Um, it is the most tested, verified, usable theory in physics. It's the reason you're looking at your phone with an LED screen. Okay, the downstream of quantum mechanics and quantum electrodynamics was the transistor, computer chips, light emitting diodes. Okay, his research, his fundamental research, is the basis for a lot of our modern technology. And he also prevented the people at Brookhaven from blowing themselves up during the Manhattan Project. They didn't understand that they're piles of nuclear material. The neutrons could feed across the piles. When he showed up, he looked at him and went, "What are you guys, fucking crazy? Put some cinder blocks, fill them up with a mixture of sand and boron, so the neutrons don't set off each other's piles." Where they were, because Brookhaven was where they actually made the fuels and the materials for what was going on at Los Alamos. It wasn't just Los Alamos; it was the Manhattan Project. It was actually a whole series of labs. The majority of it was done in secret at Los Alamos, sure. But yeah, Richard Feynman was involved in the Manhattan Project. He was involved in. He actually watched the Trinity test, and he admitted the detonation scared the shit out of him. But one of the most brilliant scientists with one of the most verifiable, useful physics theories of all time. That was Richard Feynman, great American scientist. Author John Steinbeck, American author. Um, do you really even? I think every high school or middle school student in the country reads at least some Steinbeck. In fact, I was just down in that area and saw his old buildings down the Central Coast. Another writer, Thoreau. Yeah, just incredible. Um, Groundbreaking authors, both of them, Steinbeck and Thoreau. Um, American patriot and founding mother, I always called her, Betsy Ross. Okay. Oh, we did not include politicians in this list. No politicians. Okay. Forgot to say that part in the beginning. But Betsy Ross we threw in there because she really wasn't a politician, but she was definitely influential in her time. And just created the first flag, which is actually pretty darn cool. American actor Jack Lemmon. You want a serious acting skill in cinema? Probably one of the best actors of all time is Jack Lemmon. Pick a movie he was in. He was brilliant. 12 Angry Men, China Syndrome. Just go through his IMDb and just pick a film, find it on streaming or find it in your Netflix queue or whatever. You'll never see a guy so good at his craft as Jack Lemmon. This one's flawed, but it's true. Uh, Henry Ford, great American. Kind of flawed. Yes, we talked about that a lot at the table, but actualizing the assembly chain, the assembly line, and actually getting cars to the masses. Because one of the biggest point of Ford's production was the cars had to be affordable to his own workers. If he couldn't sell his product to his own workers, something was wrong. And I think that was the part of capitalism, or is the part of capitalism that we're missing today. Okay. And some of the weirder things about Ford, he was a little bit of a socialist in a little bit of a crazy way. Like he had people go around inspecting the workers' homes in the company towns. Yeah, those still existed in his time. And they would make sure you clean the house, you were eating good food and stuff like that. Little intrusive for me, but um, Susan B. Anthony, great American, women's rights. Uh, Same vein, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Harriet Tubman, all three great gals. All three much better than Trump. Oh, there was only two, with an honorable mention of a third. There's only two guitar players ever that changed the way the guitar was played. Okay, that was Jimi Hendrix, my next one on the list. Okay, American born, and the other one was Eddie Van Halen, but he's actually Dutch Indonesian. Um, but yeah, Jimi Hendrix was a change, an artistic change uh, that was so massive because it combined everything. It combined blues with hard rock, with jazz, with whatever the hell Jimmy felt like doing. And his whole interpretation of the guitar changed the way guitar is played. And again, only two people are able to do that. It was Eddie Van Halen and Jimmy. And the other honorable mention is Sister Rosetta Tharpe. Okay, godmother of rock and roll guitar. Okay, no more cowboy chords. The whole neck is a thing. um, Shred away. Oh, another women's rights we came up with African American civil rights, women's rights, unfortunately, alcohol temperance, Sojourner Truth. Excellent American. Excellent American. Um, was a prolific speaker. Gave an iconic speech, "Ain't I a Woman?" That's, you should look that one up if you have not read that one, and was on, omnipotently for civil rights and equal rights for literally everybody. Okay, it didn't really matter race, religion, sex, gender, whatever. No, it was civil rights for everybody, and she was kind of at the forefront of that. Frederick Douglass, how can you not include him in the list? Um, One person I put in here, and he's another musician, and I'm putting him in because he got this blues master got the guitar to sing like a voice, and that was BB King. I've seen before he passed away. I saw BB at least 10 times, and one of the things I was always amazed about it. It always sounded like there was a duet going on between his voice and his guitar. And even though many people after do it beautifully, like Robert Cray, uh, BB King was the master of the whole vocal presentation, the bends, the open hand vibrato. Jimi Hendrix changed the way guitar was played. BB King made the guitar sound like a human voice. That was amazing. Who's next on our list here? So, oh yes, yes, yes. Outstanding outstanding American, another war hero. Um, Virginia Hall. She was a journalist that started working as a spy, and she used to hide stuff in her artificial leg. That's how she would courier information around because they wouldn't search. They would search her bags and stuff, but they would never search her person. So she figured out very early on how to be an information courier, and she was damn good at it. She ended up winning the Croix de Guerre and was awarded a MBE. Um, and she was an American, but she worked for the UK clandestine services, special operations. So she was a hardcore spy that helped win World War II. So, um, oh, and you can always got to do the Blazing Saddles jokes about this. It's 1865. You can sue her. The character in Blazing Saddles, Hedley Lamar, that's a play on Hedy Lamar, the actress and genius. Yes, Hedley Lamar is responsible for all the frequency skipping technologies, whether it's crypto radio, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. Yeah, that all goes back to the early work of Hedy Lamar. She was absolutely drop dead gorgeous and then absolute genius. um, oh, another war hero, Josephine Baker, officer in the American and the French Army. She was an entertainer who just, like Virginia Hall, had a different job, then decided in the war to become a spy. And she was another damn good spy for the Allies. Um, Josephine Baker was given a commission. Uh, she was given the highest awards, including the Croix de Guerre. And amazingly, Josephine Baker is interned in the Hall of Heroes in Paris. She is buried alongside Voltaire and de Gaulle. Okay. Josephine Baker, uber war hero. Yeah. She's up there with like Audie Murphy. She's she did a lot. Maybe not in combat, as a spy, but she did a lot. And she knew how to use her talent and her beauty, and she got those people talking. She fed them a little bit of booze and get them talking, and they would not shut up. And she had a steel trap for a memory, so she could recite everything they were talking about days later. She was very good at what she did. American sports legend, Billie Jean King, put women in sports on the map. Definitely needs. Another athlete who's amazing, Simone Biles, the gymnast. That gal's incredible. I call her the bouncing magic Gumby person, because if I ever try to do any of those moves, I'd break myself in half. She's an amazing athlete and so successful. Um, Two astronauts come on the list next: Sally Ride and Dr. Mae Jemison. Um, my daughter was young. We actually took her to a talk with Dr. Jemison. She was so excited. Um, yeah, we couldn't let the female cosmonauts win it all. We had to get women in space as Americans, and yeah, we have two great astronauts in Ride and Jemison. Um, Next one is kind of one of my personal favorites. I'm a big fan of this physicist, this American physicist, Dr. Lisa Randall. She is a um, physicist who specializes in gravity, the gravitron, and extra dimensions. She is a genius in the true meaning of the word. I have several of her books on my bookshelf. Um, Watched many of her talks. Just completely brilliant breakthrough. She's leading, or she was. I have to look up what their current status is, but at least a couple of years ago or last year, she was still leading up one of the projects at CERN. So she's also a leader in global physics, which is pretty amazing. Another one that's kind of like, he's got some problems, but Charles Lindbergh, Great American, better than Trump. Um, Jonas Salk, definitely better than Robert Kennedy and Dr. Oz and the rest of the shitheads that Trump put in at CDC and HHS. Um, oh, this is an amazing, amazing doctor. Uh, Literally saved babies. Dr. Virginia Apgar, the Apgar score. You know what we should do when the baby's born? Look at the baby. This woman and her work as a scientist and a doctor has literally saved untold numbers of newborn babies because they just didn't know they needed to keep an eye on the baby, and the baby could go into distress uh, after delivery. She changed that whole thing. Dr. Apgar is my book, completely amazing. Uh, and again, another gal who's completely amazing. I was a big fan before the Hidden Figures movie came out, but I thought the Hidden Figures movie was a good dramatized, little factual problems here and there, but um, the fact that Tarja P. Hansen played Katherine Johnson of NASA, one of the original computers. Um, Katherine Johnson's intelligence and mathematical skills were in the top 1% of the top 1%. Okay, and that's one of the things I think the movie did a very good job showing her abilities is when she had a chalkboard out the solution with the managers, the military, and the astronauts sitting right there. And she blew through it and went, there you go, plus or minus 20 square miles. I would be freaking out. And I'm pretty good at math. I'm just not formally trained, like she was. Um, oh, yeah, here's some more music enabled Americans. They're definitely worth acknowledgement here as better than Dear Leader. Do you know that EDM, electronic dance music, all comes down to two women? That's BB Barron, the one who wrote, with her husband, wrote the soundtrack to Forbidden Planet, the classic sci-fi movie, one of my favorite sci-fi movies of all time, by the way. That movie is completely awesome. That's why you'll hear me make Robbie the Robot cracks a lot. It's because of Forbidden Planet. And Wendy Carlos, the sort of the one of the entry level people and like building computers for the specific purpose of musical performance. And a lot of people don't know this, that a lot of people think that Stevie Wonder got the first Moog synthesizer. No, Wendy Carlos got the first Moog. The first Mega Council Moog, yeah, that went to the one you see in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. That actually belongs. Steven Spielberg borrowed it from Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder got the first massive console Moog, but the very first Moog got put out. The first one got into Wendy Carlos's hands. And Wendy Carlos, look her up. She's an amazing artist, soundtrack gal, composer. A lot different from the music I usually listen to, but I do jump into EDM every once in a while, like Robert Aki Abre, I think is his name. My one of my sons turned me on to him, and I ended up listening to that for a couple of months. Um, oh, American writer Edgar Allan Poe, the macabre poet. One of my favorites, by the way. Telltale Heart is one of the best poems/short stories I've ever read. Um, Dark, menacing, um, maybe not the horror that was Mary Shelley genre, the horror genre, but the sort of like the psychological horror genre. I think that a lot of that gets attributed to Edgar Allan Poe, for sure. Um, TV, movie, and entertainment giants, father and son team. Um, Carl and Rob Reiner. Carl Reiner is one of the most important people in early television history in America. Rob Reiner's meathead character on All in the Family. Go back on YouTube. I found the clip the other day where Meathead is talking to his father-in-law, and he's talking about it's all learned behavior. Everything negative, like we don't treat other people with respect. It's probably learned behavior from our parents. Uh, the Reiners are just part of Americana entertainment. Carl Reiner is like one of the founders of American modern television. A pretty amazing duo in my book. Um, Guys who kind of changed method acting post Brando, that ended up making so many massive, critically acclaimed movies. I think they need to be recognized in this list. Robert De Niro and Jack Nicholson. I mean, the roles that those two people have performed have become sort of a benchmark on whether or not you're giving a serious performance as an actor. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest for Jack Nicholson. I I just rewatched that like a year ago. I still can't believe how good that movie is. Okay, Taxi Driver with De Niro. Oh, hard movie to watch. Contains two of my favorite people: Jodie Foster, who's definitely an honorable mention here. She's wonderful. I love her. I've loved her my entire life. Um, and Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver. Gritty, hardcore, violent, ugly. Probably one of the best performances ever to be put down on the film. Going back to the Reiners and television, Norman Lear. Okay. Everything I watched growing up as a little kid in the early 70s was probably Norman Lear's work. um, Amazing, amazing person in that the whole construct of what we know modern television to be, that's Lear. It's like the way supermarkets work in America, that's Piggly Wiggly. Everything about a modern supermarket, that's Piggly Wiggly. I know we make fun of Piggly Wiggly all the time because the name's kind of silly, but it's actually a genius business operation that had basically invented the modern grocery store in America. Okay. Lear did that for television. My favorite director of all time, American film director Stanley Kubrick. 2001: A Space Odyssey. I literally don't know how many times I've watched that movie. And I don't give a fuck if you understand the ending or not. You're not supposed to. Oh, and by the way, the ending of 2001, it's a menagerie he's in. Yeah, he's in a human zoo. They don't, because look at the architecture, they don't know what they're building for him. Just the same way, like we didn't know how to build proper animal exhibits in zoos till like the 80s and 90s. We didn't, the aliens or the intelligent beings from somewhere else in the universe didn't know what humans do or like. And so they kind of made up a mishmash of American history. And that's the room he lives out his eternity in. And obviously some sort of space-time warp. Because he obviously went somewhere, because that's what the light tunnel scene's about. Um, and Barry Lyndon. Oh my God, the cinematography in that movie. All that movie was shot with natural light and candlelight. There isn't an artificial light in any moment of that movie, and it looks incredible. The dining room scene and under the candlelight with the mirrors in the room is impeccable, impeccable cinematography. And I have to give, I don't know if this is like on the list or definitely an honorable mention, but if you talk about Kubrick, you got to talk about you got to talk about Terry Gilliam and you got to talk about Steven Spielberg, because they took the post Kubrick movement and kept it going. They were making films that were worth watching. Not the Avengers. That got boring after a while. Um, Musicians, American musicians. Tom Schultz, founder of the rock band Boston. More Than a Feeling, one of the best rock harmonies I've ever heard in my life. And he got away with the one. Tom is awesome. Tom is a really smart dude. He went to MIT. In fact, I have a friend who also went to MIT. The only reason he wanted to go to MIT is because the dude from Boston went to MIT. Um, the whole Boston band was Tom in his basement when he got his first record deal. There was no Boston the band. It was all him. Okay. It was just him, a bunch of recording music, a bunch of instruments in his basement, and he made a demo tape and he actually got signed. That's pretty amazing. Um, and another one is Stevie Ray Vaughan, uh, the post Hendrix, keeping it going, reintroducing the blues to a whole other generation. I knew a lot about the blues before Stevie Ray, but when Stevie Ray came back into the scene, it was blues done at a mastery level. I even think in more than a few ways, Stevie Ray Vaughan was actually a better guitar player than Jimi Hendrix. Yeah, he was that good. Um, oh, classic Hollywood here. Buster Keaton. Yeah, that's a guy who left a legacy, a legacy, by the way, to be proud of, which I think is going to be hard for Dear Leader, to say the least. Buster Keaton, his real name was Joseph, Joseph Keaton. Uh, he basically was the first stuntman. He was the first physical comedy slash stuntman slash innovator, producer, director, comedian, actor. And a lot of what we consider action films today or physical comedy today, that has one source. That's Buster Keaton. He was groundbreaking. My oldest son adores Buster Keaton. Like he's watched the same documentary over several times. He has books about him. He adores the dude. Um, American entrepreneur and American engineer Steve Wozniak of Apple Next and a few other famous rounds in computing. Um, Wozniak is the real deal. Okay. He wasn't a marketing guy. He wasn't the sales pitch guy. He wasn't the disruption guy. He was the make it real. Take the idea and make it real in the physical world. And Woz was incredible at doing that. And actually, met Woz twice. Actually, outside of the food cart at an event, we actually had a hot dog and a Coke. We had lunch together real quick. I got to talk to him for about a half hour. The guy is sharp as a tack. He is careful the way he speaks. He is informative with every sentence he delivers. If Steve is talking, everybody else should be listening. Okay. If he's bringing something up, it's probably cogent and salient and important to what we're doing or what we're going to be doing in the future. I don't think a lot of people in Washington can say that, especially right now. Um, American businessman T. Boone Pickens, the most successful wildcatter in the oil industry ever, who at the end of his life tried to get the country to go green, but y'all wouldn't fucking listen. He wanted to, he took billions of his own money and it failed, but he tried to get windmills built from North Texas to North Dakota and then create the next Eisenhower interstate system with a new national power grid. A new national power grid, which, by the way, which would include Texas, who loves to lie to the rest of the country and claim they're running their own grid. No, they are not. They're pretending to run their own grid. But T. Boone saw the light after 9/11 and tried to get us to go to a green revolution. Um, he's also one of the people who very early on, like this is early, like late 50s, early 60s, one of the original people one of the original companies he was running that figured out fracking. And they actually did it right. They don't do it like they're doing today. They're fracking too high up in the geology. You got to frack deep. So none of that shit comes back up. And even T-Boone complained about how fracking was done bad before he died. Um, how many people know who Sybil Ludington was? Great American. Didn't get the credit she deserved. Okay, she was only 16 years old, and she is the one that completed the 40-mile ride that is often credited to Paul Revere. Paul Revere didn't make it. Sybil did. Okay, a lot of people don't know her. Um, oh, more astronauts on our list. American astronauts: Neil Armstrong and Chuck Yeager. I guess Chuck Yeager was a test pilot. Well, actually, he went into space in the X-15, so I think he qualifies for both. Um, Funny story about Yeager and the experimental aircraft he was flying. He was supposed to land in Missouri. He bounced off the atmosphere and barely made it down at Vandenberg in California. If he'd have missed Vandenberg, he'd ended up in the Pacific Ocean. There was nowhere else to go. Um, oh, General Patton, World War II. General Patton is the military commander who captured more troops than any other commander in warfare's history. Okay, Patton is the one that gave the one single order: drive like hell. General McCulloch and the 101st Airborne were surrounded and under siege at Bastogne, and it was Patton's army who came in. Armored troops came in and broke through and rescued the 101st. Um, a war hero about 10 times over. Probably one of the best generals ever produced in any branch of our military. Going back to American musicians, I've already mentioned her because she is the godmother of rock and roll guitar, Sister Rosetta Tharpe. Her house coat, her Gibson SG, her little Fender amp, cranking it. Um, yeah, all modern guitar, electric guitar, has to go back to Sister Rosetta. She's that important. Um, Sticking with American musicians, Les Paul and Mary Ford. Okay. You don't get Eddie Van Halen, and Eddie Van Halen said this directly to Les Paul on stage. If Les Paul didn't do the work he did and create reverb and tape delay and all the electronics he did in his garage, okay, there would be no Eddie Van Halen. Okay. Mary Ford, shredder. This gal, I love her. Boy, could she play. Whatever Les Paul could play, she could play and probably play a little faster. She was an amazing guitar player. And the two of them together, one of the 1950s, one of the biggest, well, the biggest, most popular show for a couple of years was the Les Paul Mary Ford Hour. This come out, and it was one of the first variety shows post World War II. They were super popular, but yeah, Les and Mary, the OG shredders. Uh, if you love guitar, you love rock and roll like I do. Every time you think of Les Paul and Mary Ford, you just get a chill going down your spine. That's how good they were. Um, Art. Let's talk about art because the next couple of them are definitely artists. The pop art movement. Andy Warhol, Peter Max, and Kenneth Haring. The cartoon art. Charles Schulz, Peanuts. Charles Schulz, like me, lifelong hockey fan. I haven't played since the accident, but he played into his 80s. He was still playing ice hockey in his 80s. Vocal artist, Mel Blanc. Bugs Bunny, Warner Brothers. In the wall here, I got the speechless little lithograph of all the characters and the empty mic after Mel Blanc died. Oh, just grew up with that, and that's always going to be a place close to my heart. Um, Women's rights. American activist Gloria Steinem and author Betty Friedan, now founder, National Organization of Women. Remember, within a lot of our lifetimes. If you're a Gen Xer, women did not have a right to have their own credit card. They couldn't have certain types of bank accounts. They couldn't sign for a mortgage. Okay, that's fucking absurd. And activists like Steinem and Frieden are are very responsible for changing that. Labor activist Cesar Chavez. Okay, there was a lot of abuse. I mean, cruel slavery grade abuse that was going on in the California farms. People not getting paid. I mean, just abject slavery. Okay, Chavez organized and with his wife and others and um, changed the way the field workers are treated. Still not perfect till this day, but he's probably one of the most important labor activists um, of my lifetime and probably of American history. Go back to American war heroes. This is a group of people, the Navajo code talkers, the only code no one ever broke. We broke the German Enigma machine that was Turing in the computers and his hand built computer. Okay. Nobody ever broke the Navajo code because it was a code within a code. Because even if you understood Navajo, you had to understand the language syntax they use to describe military things with words that have nothing to do with the military, like referring to planes as birds or um, re- uh, referring to a tank as a puma, you know, a mountain lion. Okay. Even if you knew the language, which if you're outside the Navajo community, that was very rare. But then you hadn't understood how they had formulated how to talk to each other. So they were amazing. Um, oh, founder of the Red Cross, Clara Barton. Okay, that's a big candle to hold up. I know, but the American Red Cross is one of our best long-term organizations in this country. Um, American Red Cross is one hell of a legacy to leave behind. What legacy is are the nationalists going to leave behind? What is dear leader going to leave behind as a legacy? Illegally changing building names? Stupid. Um, American war hero, and the first and only women to ever be decorated with the Medal of Honor, Dr. Mary Ford. Doctor and surgeon, physician, saved a lot of lives in the war. Um, the industrialists of generations past, and I grouped them Stanford, Getty, Carnegie, and Mellon. Yeah, but they're rich. They were probably, industrialist robber barons, but they knew what building institutions meant for the country, for our society, and our culture. Okay. We have Carnegie Hall now. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. Okay. Getty Art Museum in Los Angeles, world renowned. Stanford built Stanford University. Without Stanford University being built, you probably do not get the tech industry the way it exists today. The tech industry, if you're going to give it a physical place to start, is probably Stanford. Okay. With all their flaws, at least in their time, they knew what to do with money. And those institutions, those museums, those schools still exist today, and they'll still exist hundreds of years from now. I'm sorry, where's Trump University? Trump vodka? Trump steaks? Not in the same league. The next one is definitely deserving, even though she kind of inherited the business. Catherine Graham of the Washington Post. After her husband committed suicide, she got the company, but she was at the helm during Watergate, and she led the paper and the country through one of its most um, troubling times. And if it wasn't for Catherine Graham and the editor standing up along with the New York Times and eventually many, many other papers, Nixon would have probably gotten away with it. Okay. Haldeman and Mitchell and Colson would have never gone to jail for the crimes they committed. First female Supreme Court Justice, Senator Day O'Connor. Milestone. Well deserving of recognition. Um, this guy, I'm going to list him because I think he's one of the most charitable people of all time. Danny Thomas, the founder of St. Jude. There's a legacy and a half, huh? Again, Danny Thomas left us St. Jude. Leland Stanford left us Stanford University. What is Trump going to leave us? In the same vein of St. Jude, I'll recognize another group of great Americans. Every Shriner ever. Former patient, Shriners Hospital for Crippled Children in Springfield, Massachusetts. They're the ones that helped me walk again. Yeah, I was crippled as a child. It was Shriners Hospital that helped me. And they didn't charge my parents a dime. They refused to take payment. Even after my parents fundraised, the doctor administrator of the hospital literally refused to take the money from my mother. He goes, "We will find a way to pay for your son's treatment." So to every Shriner ever, you've done more for America than Trump will ever hope to do. And by the way, thank you. Thank you to Dr. Fisher. You made my life better. Got emotional with that one. Okay, back to my list. Probably one of the most important comedians of all time. American satirist and stand-up comedian Lenny Bruce. Okay, free speech activist, hardcore comic, modern comics of all stripes, especially hardcore comics, owe it all to Lenny Bruce. Even George Carlin, he said he owed it to Lenny Bruce. White Collar Drunks, one of the funniest storytells in comedy history. Go look. It's on YouTube and a couple other places, and it's on a couple of his comedy albums. White Collar Drunks, one of the best bits ever. Pioneer in American radio, Wolfman Jack. He created the modern DJ. You know, we wouldn't have grown up in the '70s with we would have never had album orientated rock if it wasn't for Wolfman Jack. He was amazing. TV innovator Jack Parr created late night television. Everything from Johnny Carson to Kimmel Today and everybody in between, Letterman, Conan, you name it. That's Jack Parr. Okay. He created a whole section of television by himself. The real inventors, Thomas Edison and Alexander Graham Bell. Edison can be an asshole for sure. But there's no doubt to what they achieved and what their legacies are. I mean, Edison, still downstream, you have the Edison utilities. Those are directly from Edison himself. Alexander Graham Bell, Ma Bell, AT&T, hell of a legacy. Turning Hollywood movies into a true art form. American directors Cecil B. DeMille and Orson Welles. The Third Man by Orson Welles is one of the best movies ever. Highly recommend that movie. American inventors. The Wright brothers. And please do not forget, it wasn't just the Wright brothers. It was also the Wright sister, Catherine Wright Haskell. Okay. Catherine did a lot of the maths. She helped out her brothers a lot, and she's mostly uncredited, which is wrong. But the we'll call it the Wright family created air flight. That's pretty amazing, pretty amazing American achievement. Um, this one kind of goes without saying. Civil rights activist, pioneer, and legend, Martin Luther King. If you haven't taken the time to figure out Dr. King, his legacy, and what he really meant to America, you're part of the problem, not part of the solution. Captain Meriwether Lewis, Second Lieutenant William Clark, and Sacagawea. That's why we have the continental United States. Quite an achievement in navigation and mapping and exploration. William Baron Jenney, the architect engineer who built the first skyscraper in 1884. Okay, and I bet you it was nicer than Trump Tower. Um, I've actually met the next person, Mr. Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Yep, I've actually met him twice. Actually, met him one time as a kid, and met him about 25 years ago at a event in the Bay Area here. Um, you don't get any more nicer and more prominent in early childhood development than Mr. Rogers. He's a seminal figure in early childhood development, something that I've been involved in for 25 years through one of the organizations I work with. Um, Personally, I think Mr. Rogers is a great American. Um, American scientist, communicator, author, and probably the creator of one of the best science shows ever, Dr. Carl Sagan. Uh, to say Carl was brilliant is easy. Where he really came into like amazing status is his public communication of science. Whether he was on Johnny Carson, whether he was giving testimony at Congress, whether he was giving a lecture at a university, he was a salient voice in science, in the direction of science, and his contributions can never be underestimated. Um, the little fun fact that Carl Sagan is the one that came up with the idea of the gold records that are on Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. Uh, Stephen Hawking hated those. It's the quiet hiding theorem. If you're in a forest and you're a little animal, do you make a lot of noise and gather a lot of attention? No, you do not. You hide as a bit of survival. Um, so yeah, Sagan came up with the records for the Voyagers. Hawkins saved it. I always talked about this guy, one of my favorite authors of all time, futurist Isaac Asimov. Um, Scientist Edward Hubble, the guy who figured out the Hubble matrix of the universe, the expanding, proved that the universe was expanding. It was not static. When Einstein was given the letter about Hubble's discovery, Hubble Einstein said that Hubble's work, he may have found out one of the most important things about the universe. Scientist and Dr. James Watson, the guy who discovered DNA, one of the biggest medical breakthroughs of all time. One of the best entrepreneurs of all time in American history, Dave Thomas, creator of Wendy's restaurants. Okay, not bad for a guy who had an 8th grade education. Um, we have to talk about jazz. Jazz is the American music form. John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Thelonious Monk, Buddy Rich, Gene Krupa. Gene Krupa, also the drum teacher later in life to Neil Peart of Rush. Yeah, Neil Peart later in life went back and relearned how to play the drums so he could play in the Buddy Rich Orchestra. And his drum teacher was Krupa. Helen Keller, amazing American. My wife and I spent 20 years running a club, 20 plus years running a 4-H club. Temple Grayden, PhD in animal science, professor of humane livestock treatment, and a 4-H hero. Okay. Um, oh, recently retired ballet superstar Misty Copeland. She was kind of massive. Um, oh, two of my favorite American scientists, both theoretical physicists, Alan Guth of MIT and Dr. Leonard Susskind of the Stanford Theoretical Physics Department. Alan Guth, what happened before the Big Bang, Suskind's string theory, and many other things. Another scientist and a physicist who won the Fields Medal, which is a mathematician's award, Ed Winton. Ed Winton may be the smartest person alive today. Uh, and the fact that he is not a formally trained mathematician, he's a formally trained physicist after getting a non-science degree in his undergraduate work, transferred to the sciences, worked all the way through physics and the math of physics enough to get a Fields Medal. That's incredible. Much more of achievement than, holding a dinner at Mar-a-Lago. This is an interesting one. We liked looking up this one. My wife and I. One of the American researchers and doctors and physicians that need to be really put up on a pillar, Robert Jarvik, the Jarvik artificial heart. Talk about a medical breakthrough. Holy cow. Back then it was a temporary solution, not a permanent solution, but the fact that we could simply develop that piece of technology and put it into action was incredible. Now, a little interesting note about Jarvik. It's about his wife. Does anybody remember who Jarvik's wife was? Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is dear leader porn star Harper keeps telling us how smart he is, and he's probably the smartest American who's ever been out there. I do everything better. No. Dr. Robert Jarvik's wife, Marilyn Vos Savant, is the smartest person that we've ever detected in American society. She had a 228 IQ. If you think Dr. Jarvik was smart, his wife, Marilyn, was even smarter. um, Henry Burke, creator of the American Society for the Protection of Animals, PCA. Going back to some jazz monsters, but this is the fusion period. We took traditional jazz and then we made a whole other version of jazz called fusion jazz, which is my favorite. Coltrane, Davis, already mentioned, but they got mentioned again. Herbie Hancock, Pat Metheny. Monsters in fusion jazz. A totally new music form. And one I really groove on. My son, who actually works in theater and music, he's a Herbie Hancock disciple. Every time Herbie Hancock comes on the screen, he nuts up. He just loves the guy. And Herbie Hancock plays the general in Valerian, the sci-fi movie. Um, he's like, "Is that who I think it is?" I go, "Oh yeah." Um, American athlete, basketball legend Bill Russell, and I include him on this list because what Bobby Orr did for hockey, being the two-way Godzilla monster that nobody knew what the hell to do with. You're playing defense, but you're also a total offensive threat. That was Bill Russell in basketball. Bill Russell is probably, in my opinion, the most significant contributor to the game of basketball of all time. Okay, it's not Larry Bird, even though Larry Bird's kind of my favorite. MJ was awesome. LeBron, awesome. Curry, awesome. Did they change the game? No. Bill Russell did that. Same way Bobby Orr did it for hockey. They didn't know what the hell to do with Russell because aren't you supposed to be playing defense and you just burn me for another 20 points in this quarter? Yeah, big problem. One of the unsung American heroes of technology and the reason you have the internet, the guy who created the TCP protocol, John Pascal. Yeah. We wouldn't be seeing each other if we didn't have the addressing mechanism Pascal designed, and was one of the biggest reasons um, why the internet proliferated as it did. And on the idea of internet innovation uh, and entrepreneurship, Leonard Bosack and Sandy Lenar, the husband and wife who created Cisco networking in their garage in Palo Alto. Okay. The reason we have a physical working internet that is worldwide today, that's Bosack and Lenar. Comes down to two people hacking at gear in their garage. Same way Les Paul created, tape delay and echo in his garage. They hacking in the garage is an American pastime. And I'll end this with sort of a fun story because I think this is another person that should be recognized as a great American, far greater than Dear Leader will ever possibly become. It is a aerospace engineer named Judith Love Cohen. Um, this is an interesting tie around, a fun little end to this. Is she made massive, massive contributions to the Apollo program. Okay. Uh, she was the one that solved one of the computing problems that were occurring in real time in one of the Apollo missions. She figured it out while she was in labor. Okay. Mid labor, she asked for a phone to be brought bedside. She calls her boss at NASA and she goes, "Yeah, I just figured it out." Ah, contraction. She, her work fixed the abort guidance system and brought the Apollo 13 astronauts back home safely. Talk about a real time puzzle solver and awesome engineer. And this is the fun part of Judith Love Cohen's story. She was in labor. And a few minutes after giving the solution to the problem back to her manager at NASA, she gave birth to her son, actor and musician Jack Black. That's just fun. So yeah, that's we were just sitting in a restaurant, and then the whole discussion came up as like who would be a better who would be thought of as a better American than Dear Leader? Who are the 100 people we could come up? Could we come up with 100 people sitting here while we eat our goiza and um, spicy garlic edamame and lobster salad roll? Drinking large Sapporo's. Said, can we come up with 100 people that we think would just flatly be better Americans, better contributions, better whatever than Trump? And the fact was, yeah, it was actually easy because he's so far low on the totem pole. He is going to be known the same way as like Andrew Jackson or Garfield is known, or Ponzi, Charles Ponzi, the Ponzi scheme guy. He's not. He's not. He's not the figure he portrays to himself to be. He is not innovative. He is not a thinker. He is not a contributor. He is not a solver. He does not define anything. He bitches, moans, whines, and displays his animus and grievance, and he calls that intelligence. What an asshole. And the thing is, I don't suffer from Dunning-Kruger syndrome. He does. A lot of people in our society do. The whole thing where, people who have no domain knowledge about a certain topic and they present themselves as the world's leading expert. How many times has Trump done that? Nobody has done this in American history. I'm the only one to do that. I'm the only one that can keep saying on and 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 on. I'm sorry, that's just fucking annoying. And in the end, do we get Carnegie Mellon research institutions? No. Where did the money go? Where did Fred Trump's money go? To bad business deals, business fraud, according to a trial, and hookers and blows and little girls and illegal trips to to pervert island, the degenerate island. What is he going to build that is going to last for our society? Name anybody on this list that he can even barely hold a candle to. And I think very quickly, because you're seeing already people kind of running for the doors on the MAGA side of life. They're already, poof, somebody turned off on the lights and the cockroaches are running. That's what I'm saying. Okay. They know he ain't the person he's been telling us. In the end, we're not going to solve any problem under his regime. We're going to create problems, sure. We're not going to solve shit. Okay. Because his policies are conflicted, they're unproductive, they're harmful in a lot of cases, they're goddamn mean in others. Okay. They're ridiculously stupid in other places, like stopping cancer research for kids. How is pediatric cancer research not a priority? So when we built out this list, one, we found out it was a lot easier to do than we thought. And it also gives us kind of some solace here, because America actually does have a lot of people and a lot of things in its history to look at and go, wow, that was amazing. People should look back on the great activists, whether they're labor or civil rights or whatever, and look back and go, yeah, thank you for standing up and helping changing things for the better, which I literally do not think dear leader is capable of. Because if he wins, you must lose. Okay. Imagine if Trump created what Salk created. Salk gave it away. Jonas Salk. This is for a betterment of mankind. Under Trump, there's only the betterment of Trump. So in the big American, history playbook, what does he really offer? And the answer is not a lot. Almost nothing on the positive side, especially when you take into account the business fraud convictions and what's coming out in the Epstein files. And for people to look up, this is my personal problem. For people to look up to dear leader Pornstar Humper, then not know many of the people on this list I just went through. That's what I think, like, because I've had this happen before. Like, I will mention somebody like Richard Feynman, mention somebody like Alan Guth. Okay. No clue who they are, but they literally think that dear leader is the walking personification of their magical mystery sky daddy. Is it you think he's cool because you literally don't know anybody else has existed in our country's history? Or are you just so mean yourself and so lost in your own bullshit, you don't care anymore? You're watching this guy, because I remember the reason they voted for this guy was the big double finger to both parties. Okay, they're being left behind, so they just wanted to kick the soup can over, spill the beans, and go, ha ha, look what we did. Well, now it's getting real. Now it's getting to be problematic over the long term. We now have generational problems. What did we get from Carnegie and Mellon? Generational solutions. All we're getting out of Dear Leader are generational problems. So look forward and look at from your own relativity, your own vantage point, your own viewpoint. And when the video posts up, put in the comments, who do you think belongs on the list? The 100 Americans who are clearly better than Dear Leader, clearly more impactful, clearly changed the game in their field or their domain of expertise. Because right now we have a leader who doesn't have any expertise on anything. Christ, half the days now he can barely form a fucking sentence. Carlos Santana, good choice. Good choice. Huge fan of Santana. I've also met him. Met him in San Francisco at a company event. It was the Windows 2000 release party for Microsoft. They hired Carlos and his band to play the night party, and I happened to run into him in the hallway, so I got to shake his hand and thank him for all the music. Yeah, Carlos is a badass. So is his wife, the drummer. She's killer too. So yeah, think about it yourself. Think about like who else do you think that would be a better American? Down the road, everybody will still be looking at that American. Like 200 years from now, people are still going to be talking about the contributions of Richard Feynman, still talking about the beautiful music of Herbie Hancock, still talking about the writings of Thoreau. What are they going to be talking about when it comes to Dear Leader Porn Star Humper? How many hoes he nailed in his life? How much Adderall and cocaine he required to get through an average day? Because that's Noel Castor's. That's not my accusation at all. Noel Castor keeps bringing that up on his page, here or Blue Sky. Look him up. Okay, he used to work for Trump. He goes, the guy can't get through his day without Adderall and cocaine. Okay, these far right nationalists trying to co-opt Martin Luther King, trying to tell us that Charlie Kirk was Martin Luther King. Fuck you. Okay, and Martin Luther King wasn't perfect. He was a man like everybody else. Okay, everybody's got a flaw. Okay. In fact, the last time, from what you American politicized Christians tell me, the last guy that was perfect, they nailed to a couple of 2x4s. Yeah, Rubio was high as a freaking kite in that press conference, wasn't he? He was tweaking. I mean, you had to be in the 90s on the Central Coast with the rich boys from the richer families who could afford the good cocaine, the real Bolivian marching powder, the Colombian ski slope. Yeah, they got so high. They were either tweaking like Rubio was in that press conference, or they were shit-faced drunk. They only had like 2 beers in the night, but they had done so much cocaine, they actually looked alcohol drunk. Okay. And Rubio, yeah, he was totally tweaking. It was either cocaine, Adderall, or 29 Starbucks. I don't know which. But yeah, think about it. I mean, you think of all the things that America has produced. Like who is it? Grover Washington, the dude that thought up crop rotation. Fucking brilliant, man. That literally saves the land. You can't put the same shit in the same hole year after year after year. You'll kill the soil. He figured that out. His nose wasn't Starbucks. Yeah, I was watching Rubio tweak live, And all I could think of was the Deadpool scene where he's telling her there's several kilos of cocaine hidden in the apartment. You just have to find it. Rubio found it. Uh, so, anyways, that was my thought. Yeah, there are people have contributed to the excellence in culture and society of America. Dear leader porn star Humper isn't one of them. That's just a fact. He sucks. He's not offering any long-term solution to America other than his personal enrichment, his self-aggrandizement, his achievement. There is no greater good with these clowns, with these nationalist clowns. And remember, Dear Leader is not a nationalist. He's a meist. Okay. He's an authoritarian, malignant narcissist. His support comes from the nationalists and the theocratic nationalists and the accelerationists. Okay. But when we look back at this period, when it's over, and it will end, this cycle will come to a close. Trump and his ilk will eventually be out of the main part of our zeitgeist. Hopefully, a few people stay in the news, while they're being prosecuted for a variety of crimes. Um, but like Trump trying to take credit for military operations. Um, I'm sorry, FDR did not try to take credit for what Audie Murphy did. So when we get through this, look back, realize there's still a lot to appreciate about America, as imperfect as we are. There's still people who contributed, who mean something in American history that should give us the motivation and the example to move forward and try to make America a better place. So I'll say this again. America is still worth fighting for. Okay. And I'm not one of these empty people who've never left the county they were born in. I lived overseas for over 3 years. Okay. When I say America's pretty damn good, because I've seen other examples, also other examples that are pretty damn good. But hey, we have the NHL and Hooters and Dunkin' Donuts. So, we win. Okay. So look back at the positives, those positive personas, those amazing achievements, and use them as the buttress for our will and our souls moving forward till we can get to the end of this phase. Because we need to get to the end of the phase, then we had a shit ton of work to do. We got to do the cleanup. Okay. You don't give them an inch because they'll take a mile. We work together. And I mean work together. It's MAGA versus everybody else. Except like the real crazies on the fringe, like the Constitutionalist Party out here on the West Coast. They're just an independent, like theocratic nationalist party that has nothing to do with being an independent or a nonpartisan, or the Lyndon LaRouche survivors out there. Other than those kooks, the bulk of the rest of us, it's us against the nationalists. And we have to win. We have to win. If we don't, our children and our grandchildren will suffer. Okay. So use those great Americans that did great things as the motivation to keep driving forward, to keep up the good fight. Yes. I'm not saying for a second we take our foot off the gas. No, we keep driving forward, we keep fighting forward. We don't tolerate any of this crap. We call out the bullshit. Okay? But use those great Americans as the motivation, as the strength, as the perseverance we need to move forward and get into a new, more positive cycle for the country, for the society, for our culture. Okay. And please, until next time, think about it.